This is Radio Now 95.3 FM.
A very good morning to you, Lagos, Nigeria. It's still Now Breakfast on your Beyond the News station, Radio Now 95.3 FM Lagos. I'm Stephen Imediegu here with Nabila Usman. And together we're bringing you this week's edition of The Newsmaker. The need for decentralized policing has been discussed endlessly in Nigeria, and especially as security challenges continue to interrupt the lives and activities of Nigerians. Now, while these conversations are ongoing, attempts have been made to bolster the existing police system with regional security outfits like Amotekun, Tantita Security Services in the Niger Delta, and the more recent Community Protection Guards in Zamfara State. Now, there have been conversations, however brief or inconclusive, about state and community policing, but all these efforts have pointed repeatedly to a growing concern about security and Nigeria's ability to tackle crime and criminality. Joining us this morning is Dr. George Ubo, the Managing Director of Panic Alert Security Systems. Dr. Ubo has a PhD in security management, and he joins us to speak on the idea of decentralizing the police force. Dr. Ubo, good morning, and thank you for joining us on the conversation.
Good morning, how are you?
We're fine, thank you. My colleague Nabila Usman is here, and together we're going to be having this conversation this morning. To start with, can you give me an overview of the policing system that we have currently in Nigeria, pointing out specifically what issues we have, what things are wrong with it?
It's simple. You cannot police any country without having a database, whether it is centralized police or decentralized policing. You have to have the database of everyone in that country. Reason being, whenever any crime is committed, you must go to the scene, get the requisite information you need, maybe the biometrics. Then if you don't have the database, you cannot do anything with it, because you have to use the database, put it in your system, and churn out the culprit or culprits involved. So if you don't have database, even the blueprint I wrote, I stated clearly, if you don't have database, don't even bother with other things involved. Because if you don't have database, you can't deal with the emergency transmission and all that. So database is the key. Now, once you get the database, reason being, you have the identity and information database, by the way, meaning you have your identity database and information. For instance, if you go to court, there is a court judgment against you, say for 100 million naira, it should be in a database. So if you go to the bank to loan money, the bank should be able to find out that there is a judgment against you. So this is all part of running a country, in the sense of security. Now, once you get the database, and I'm talking biometrics, iris, that is your eyes, your voice, because there is no crime you commit without, talking, touching, moving. So once you have all that, it makes solving crimes easier, even if you don't solve it immediately. But if you now have encounter with anyone who is not captured in the database, then once you capture that person, it will query the person's identity. For instance, if that person was involved in a robbery incident 6 months ago, it will tell you the so-so person was involved in so-so robbery. So that is the reason database is very, very, very crucial to solving crimes. There is no country you have that is robust in crime solving that doesn't have database. Now, after that, you go into emergency transmission, response, and evacuation. even with the database now, whenever there is any crime, you must have a response team on ground. I got to the US in 1984. 911 was there, still there, was there before I got there. You should be able to communicate the police through, sorry, I have a code, through your emergency call, your panic button, but all that should go to the response team. And how do you do that? In any country, just like I was saying about the US, there is no place you are, even if you're in the country, in the boonies, in the country. If you call 911, police response will come to you, because it's been set up that there will all say 2, 3, 4, 5 mile radius. There is a response team there, seated. that is why in my proposal, I stated that too, that you should, in all the local government areas, you must have response vehicles, but we must have the requisite technology too to communicate. That is why in US, we talk about policemen drinking coffee and eating donuts because they sit in the police car. They're not just sitting there, they're waiting for that response. I mean, that emergency alert to come so they can,
Respond to it.
Respond immediately. Where I am now in South Africa, you can Google it.
So let me come in, sir, and let's just perhaps try to expand a little more. You've touted solutions that look at a centralized system, and you just started to speak on that a bit. I'm looking at the multiple security agencies we have in the country: the NSCDC, the police force, the armed forces, the intelligence agency, the state security services. We've got quite a few. And one of the things that's been touted as a central system of sorts for them is actually the Office of the National Security Advisor. Let's speak about where the inadequacies are with the office and how it is set up right now in the context of some of the solutions you've touted.
It's simple. I call it overlapping functions of the security agencies. When I attended NIPS Guru, I stumbled into the proposal George Bush, former president of the US, made to the US Congress after the 9/11. Of course, you know the impact of 9/11. After that, all the security chiefs were gathered together in the US and said, guys, what is going on here? Why did this happen to us? And they found out that under the old system, and they use an example, like if a ship comes into the US, about 4, 5, 6, up to 7 agencies from US Coast Guard to immigration to custom, the local police will have jurisdiction. And instead of them to work together, they will be butting heads and fighting. And in so doing, a dangerous person or weapon will slip into the country. And that was like boom to me, because that is what happens. When I was writing my blueprint, actually on Arise TV one morning, there was a situation in Edo State, some pipeline vandals, Nigerian Army, police, and a local security outfit, and the the civil defense. They were actually arguing who has the jurisdiction to arrest these vandals. I said, boom, this is it. This is exactly what the US then talked about, because that is what happens in Nigeria. Of course, you know, the same Edo State, when Oshomole was governor, his aide was killed. The DSS arrested some suspect, police arrested some suspect. There was this headbutting as to who has the right suspect. So back to your answer, madam, it's not really about the nomenclature, it is about the technology and the need to, and what the US did under the Department of Homeland Security is to fuse all these agencies under one umbrella. That is why now when you go to US, you see DHS Custom, DHS Immigration. They did that so that they don't see each other as enemies. So because they not share database, they're still different agencies, but they share database. Now you have to have a situation where the Nigerian police, army, civil defense, all of them, they need to share database. And to do that, it doesn't matter the office, it could be the NSS office, has to coordinate. There has to be a coordination so that database, whatever the police has, the army would have, civil defense would have, so that anything they're doing, they would know, like click of a button. That is the issue here.
Right.
Yeah, so if police arrest someone, go ahead.
I apologize for interrupting. Now, when we're talking about database, we've seen attempts in Nigeria to create a database. The NIMC came up. We've talked about different forms of identification. We've got driver's licenses. We've got international passports, and so on and so forth. Isn't it possible for these existing databases to be used by the security forces in detecting or solving crimes, or do we need to create a brand new system?
Yeah, and I talked about that. I use the word harmonization. NIMC is doing theirs. You have, of course, BVN, the bank. You have the VIO, I think. So what you need to do is harmonize all that. When you harmonize, and it has to be scalable, you harmonize whatever they don't have, you add it to it. Because what I'm proposing really is just not biometrics alone. I mean, crime has taken a different dimension. You feel me? Yeah, you don't have to have only biometrics. You have to have iris. You have to have voice.
Mm.
If somebody calls you for ransom, it's voice they're using. So you need to be able to get that, that voice, put it in the system. And once that, if that person's voice has been captured in the past, you're going to nail that person down. So we need to do it in consonant with the way, the dimension crimes and criminality have gone. So that is why we need to propose. And whenever you do it, it has to be like, I use the word scalable. You have to be able to adapt and scale it in the future. So that is why even the blueprint, I started writing it in 2008, and I'm still improving it because like things fall apart. Eneke the bird said, since men have learned how to shoot without missing, he has learned how to
shoot without missing.
Without passion. So that is why even after 9/11, as sophisticated as the US system was before 9/11, they still found something wrong. And they had to go back to the drawing board and came up with Department of Homeland Security. And it's been working. So that is what you do. You don't just, and this is a system that was so sophisticated. I mean, look at us. We don't have up to what the US had before 9/11, and we still have not improved. So the proposals are there. Now, if you recall the time of Obasanjo, Sajem, the French company, was going to do the database for Nigeria. There was this whole corruption thing involved. It's not like we don't know what to do. I mean, we've got brains, Nigerians, in all these companies all over the world. You've got Nigerians working there. It's just the issue of implementation and the politicians having the willpower to do it. For instance, my information database, the part of that database has to do with collation of all, like, for instance, homes. With that, people that own 60, 70 homes in Abuja, they ask people that own it, you'll be able to try to, find out, but they will not implement it because they know once they implement it, it's going to be the albatross, it's going to be their water. That is the issue, is the willpower.
If we foresee a situation where this is actually implemented, I wonder if you see it also being bogged down by some of the red tape and other challenges that we have had with a centralized system. Do you see that also plaguing this centralized information system you've touted?
Wow. To me, to be honest with you, whether it is centralized or not, it is just the human element in Nigeria. State policing, I mean, to me, it's more of the technology. What I have put down on paper can be done either way. It can be centralized, it can be state police, it doesn't really matter. But what I want is that whether it is centralized or not, if you don't have the right people with the right frame of mind doing this, it's still not going to work. You feel me? So, for instance, if you go state policing, we know after living in the US for over 20 years, I know the problems plaguing state policing too. If a criminal is caught in New York today, and that criminal is wanted in Atlanta, it's going to take some time for Atlanta to seek extradition and everything. And if that governor in New York is protecting that criminal, the criminal is not going to be extradited. So either way you look at it, there are pros and cons. So, but the point is, let us have the database. That is even the key. Let us have the database because that creates this deterrence. If, for instance, I talk about South Africa, not the bank robbery and all that. When you have, when I started Panic Alert Security Systems in 2008, the late CP FCT Haruna John, very good friend of mine, said, look, that because our electric fence, when you cut the wire, it transmits to the handset, our control room, and the police for response. The armed robbers stayed away from, and they confess that those houses with the electric fence, they don't mess with them. That is deterrence. So that is what you create now. When you have the database and you start, catching robbers and thieves, very swiftly, is going to create that deterrence. They're going to be very careful what they do. For instance, if kidnappers kidnap, and through the voice recording, you start apprehending them because you have their data. You know that this person's data, this is who this person is. Then it's gonna make them sit up. But when you have a country where you don't have database, you're not really making any dent on apprehending these. Of course, they're gonna have a field day. That is the issue. I mean, I use the bombing, the Boston bombing, the Sanaya brothers.
So, Dr.
It
Roberts,
was a CCTV that caught them. The CCTV, not the government CCTV, of a store owner. So if we can get, if we can get, I mean, yeah.
So to hone in on this particular one, what we have seen as far as Nigeria is concerned has been attempts to create a database, and you've talked about harmonizing them. I wonder if the suggestions that you're making can be applied in any way to, I would say the most recent one has to be the NIN, which is still an ongoing conversation in Nigeria, with some SIM cards set to be barred this year. Looking at the security challenges, especially around kidnapping that we've seen in Nigeria in the last few months of the last few weeks of 2024, is there a way that your proposed system, without, say, the voice tracking ability, would have been able to solve some of these crimes faster?
Because if you look at my blueprint, the emergency transmission, you have a system where it could be a national grid, where you call, and it's going to be set up in different dialects. And of course, you're going to work with the GSM companies. And that protocol involves whenever you call, even when you call, your voice is already captured, so they will know if you are the real person calling or not. So wouldn't, under that system, use any SIM card to make any call if it's not registered like that, because it's not even going to work. But the bottom line is, apart from the voice, you see, it's a multi-dimensional approach. Apart from the voice, you have geolocation. When a kidnapper is calling you and just talking freely, come on, man, not this day and age. You should be able to geolocate where that person is, apart from the voice. So it's not this. There are so many ways to catch them. The voice is there, the geolocation is there, you name it. So either way they go, then of course, if it's, for instance, the Chibok one, where you take 100, 200, there is no way, even from my control room. That was why the US government was laughing at us. How can you take 100 people in the bush, in the forest, this day in age, without having the system, the drone, to locate them? Do you know what it is to transport 100 people? It's not possible. Not even 10, not even 2. Where you are now, there are drones that are seeing you where you are now all over the world. As you are now, there are some drones that can take you out from Israel, from where you are. I mean, so what I'm saying is, the technology is there. We have it. You cannot move 10, 20 people in the along and demanding ransom without knowing where they are, if you have the requisite technology, apart from even the voice or the whatever. So that is what I'm talking about. We just need to embrace technology, period.
Definitely. I think that is the line that we can pause this conversation on today. Dr. Ubo, thank you very much for speaking with us, and thank you very much for sharing the insights that you have about solving insecurity in Nigeria.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Our guest this morning, Dr. George Ubo, is the CEO of Panic Alert Security Systems. He's also the chairman and executive director of George Ubo Whistleblowers Network. He joined us to speak on Nigeria's security challenges, decentralizing the police by applying technology to solve our security problems. We'll continue to have these conversations and much more right here on Radio Now 95.3 FM. We ask, as always, that you stay with us as we take you beyond the news.
This is Radio Now 95.3 FM.